Cool that you are here with us. So the reason we're doing webinars for Global IOC is to help our clients and people that have taken courses with Global IOC, and to help ourselves grow in terms of sharpening our own saw. And that we want to look at how we can integrate materials that focus on us, our leadership as coach, and also the organization. One of the things I became really clear about this year is that as a coach, we have to do the work on ourselves as much as tell others the work that they need to do, okay? And so we've got to be growing as our clients are growing. And so that's what we're going to do today, is grow a little bit. So quickly on the housekeeping rules, let me put this to the full screen. There we go. That's better. Is that you can use the Q&A to post questions. Just remember, everybody can see your questions, and we'll answer questions at the end of the call. There's a small group today, so we'll probably answer questions in the middle. If for some reason we don't have an answer for the question, I will get back with you, the group that's on the call today, and always follow us on LinkedIn. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about the perks of staying stuck. And now I have worked with clients before, and when you ask a client what their payoff is for staying stuck, if you don't have a good relationship with them, they might feel offended by it. But the truth is there are payoffs for being stuck. And we're going to talk about those payoffs by an author who wrote the book, The Science of Stuck. Her name is Britt Frank. And then we're going to talk about timing. How does timing help us get unstuck? What are best times? And so that's a Dan Pink book from When. He has a fabulous YouTube on it that's an hour that's really worth it. And then we're going to talk about The Anatomy of Breakthroughs by Adam Alter. And he had 100 ideas for breakthroughs. I'm not going to read them all. I have about 20. So let's dig into what we're going to talk about today. I'm stopping my share because my computer is not cooperating, because it does that to me. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do is...
And Dr. Peggy, as you're doing that, hi, by the way, it's Kathy.
Hi, Kathy.
Hello. Hi, Matt. Hi, Marilyn. And Melissa's joining too. The Dan Pink, what was the book that you referenced? When?
Yeah.
When? Okay.
Yeah.
Not familiar with that one. Okay. I have to look at that and look at that TED Talk. I'm
surprised that we haven't talked about that, because I'm such a Dan Pink fan. But
right.
When I built these slides for a presentation on a distraction-proof summer, and I used one for that. I love Dan Pink. I saw him at an ICF conference back in the day, back when he was talking about the world. I'm trying to think of his book on the world, but it was really fabulous. So I'm going to try to see if I can pull these slides back up and figure out why I'm stuck. So we might have to do it this way, because when I put them in full screen, they're uncooperative. But let me try again to put them in full screen and see if it works. Oh, it's working. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the perks of staying stuck. Number one, it prevents discomfort. Okay, moving forward can create some pain depending on what we're moving forward with. It protects you from your emotions because you don't have those feelings that come up when we move forward. It promotes connection. So you stay connected into yourself, and the connection that stays the way it has been, and it doesn't disrupt. Okay. When people get unstuck, it can disrupt their relationships. So when they stay stuck, it can keep those connections. And fourthly, it points to our problems. And again, the book is by The Science of Stuck by Britt Frank, but it points to where we really need. That's our focus. Where we're stuck, it tells us where the movement needs to go. Okay, so what are the 9 benefits of staying stuck? So it's really funny. Britt goes into the idea that I talk about all the time. When I ever get a chance to talk about the brain, I'm in hog heaven, right, Matt? I love to talk about the brain. And so remember, the brain, in order to change, the brain has to use the prefrontal energy in the prefrontal cortex that normally isn't used. So the body needs more energy, and the basal ganglia is what keeps us from moving, and so in homeostasis. And so it conserves energy in the body. It also preserves the image we have of ourselves. We don't have to change that, because guess what? If we try something new and we're not successful, then we have a different way of looking at our image, which is part of risk management as well. If we move forward and we're not successful, then was the risk worth it? Then we have control. We're in control because we know what stuck is. We numb from the pain of moving. And it's really interesting, because I had a client that was trying to leave a relationship. And when I really was moving with her and asking her questions about it, I said, so why do you think you really don't want to leave the relationship? And she said, I don't like the feeling I get in my stomach. And so staying in this relationship avoids that feeling, that pain numbing. And Dreiker's, a psychologist from back in the day, says a kid would rather have a soggy potato chip rather than no potato chip at all. So we know what the potato chip tastes like, right? And if we don't have anything, then we have pain. It's familiar. One of the things that I've been exploring this year in my own body of work is toxic familiarity. Even though something might be toxic to us, we tend to stay in it because it's familiar. You know, the bird in the hand versus the bird in the bush, those, we've got all kinds of sayings about how we want to stay with familiarity. It's safer. You know, again, no risk. We know what we've got and we can handle it. And I even think about the Gay Hendricks book on the Big Leap. And then he talks about the zone of excellence versus the zone of genius, and why people don't move into the zone of genius. And that's because it's safe in the zone of excellence. We're good, we get a good salary, we have a good family, we have the things we want in our life. You know, going for more creates an idea of maybe we don't have safety. Again, using that same example, financial security. We don't take a risk that would lessen our ability to have that financial security. When you think about people's unwillingness to leave roles, even though they're toxic. And then again, I already brought this up, but the relationship equilibrium. It's amazing how many times I'll ask clients, are you ready for this to change your relationship? Because the idea is when I shift, the relationship shifts. That can be work relationships, that can be personal relationships. But when people start to shift and out of stuckness, then it can create relationship problems. There's all kinds of stories about in personal relationships when people lose weight. And it's offsetting for the other partner. When people are promoted at work, all of a sudden their friends start to change in some situations. And so it's easier to just stay where we are than to move forward. So what I want to talk about now is why my computer won't move. There we go. So bottom line takeaways. When we're talking with clients, we want to dig into what is the perk for staying where you are, okay? The health benefits to staying stuck are, it doesn't create any problems for our brain and using energy. And so we conserve energy. And so there is a certain amount of that in terms of staying stuck. Understanding the function of the stuckedness. That's a Peggy Marshall word. The stuckedness. What is keeping the person stuck? What is the function of that behavior? We talked about the nine things that keep people stuck. Is it familiarity? Is it, you know, risk management? What is that function that is serving the person? And again, we cannot overestimate the staying stuck preventing you from failure and rejection. I'm going to weave in a little bit about the messy middle here, which is what one of my students, master students, Carol Asalian, did a master's project on what happens in the messy middle. And So when we get to the messy middle, we say, I really don't want to do this anymore because it's taking energy, it's changing relationships, we've got competing commitments. What people find in the messy middle is that that maybe what they started off, like, I know Matt's a runner, so maybe they committed in the family that they could have Saturday mornings to do their distance running, but now the family wants to do other things, and so now we have competing commitments with that distance running. Okay, that could also be something in terms of moving in an organization. You now have to learn a new role, do more work, and maybe instead of 45 hours a week, you're working 55 hours a week. Those 10 hours are coming from someplace. Okay, so we start reevaluating, and then that creates that, what do I really want, and that stuckedness. Our brain is wired for survival. Again, Britt talks a lot about the how our brain does have a big function on being stuck. And the nervous system is engineered to conserve energy. I think this second to the last one is really, really, really important as a coach. And that is, what are the behaviors that getting curious about the behaviors gets you out of stuck without blame. Okay, why am I stuck? What is it doing for me? And it's not to blame or feel guilty about it, but why don't I want to eat healthier? What is going on? Why am I stuck with changing my diet? Why am I not pursuing my dream? And when we talk about intended change theory, and the idea is to start with, where do you want to go? What keeps me from really reaching out to where I want to go? I was talking with a leader yesterday in an organization, and he has a younger team. And one of the things we talked about is that some folks haven't even been allowed to dream. So if you've got clients in an organization and his team, and he says, where do you really want to go? And they're like I was like, okay, this is a hard one, because when he asks people what they want for the year, they come back and they say, I want to meet expectation, instead of wanting, a promotion. Usually I hear I want a promotion without doing the work. But this group was like, I just want to come to work and go home. So what's in that stuckness of why they can't move forward? And it feels like I can't dream. I haven't been allowed to dream. Again, if we come back up to the 9 things we talked about earlier, we're talking about, if I dream and I fail, then what does that mean? So familiarity is, getting a meets is familiarity. So and one of the things that Britt says, and this is so true, and I think we really want to hone in on the last one, and that is, it's harder to avoid feelings than to feel feelings. And I don't think we realize that. I think if we suppress, Marilyn, you reached out about the emotional intelligence blog, where people, all the current authors are saying suppression doesn't work. And if we look at, historically, and we look at emotional intelligence, we say, don't bring that to work. But now we know we're feeling, we've got more energy around feeling. And so avoiding now, where we used to be really good at suppressing, avoiding now is creating issues for people, because it's coming out somewhere. Those feelings are in there, and they do come out somewhere. So a couple of resources that I use for when people are stuck, and actually Britt talked about it, is the Decisional Balance Index. And this is an interesting thing, because it's 4 ways of looking at what you want to do. And I love it because it goes a little bit along the line of the book Decisive by Chip and Dan Heath, where they're talking about, if I do this, what will lead to wild success? Conversely, if I do this and I fail miserably, what will get in the way? So we start asking, what do we need to move forward, and what is going to help us? And so when we're working with clients that are in that risk management piece, we can ask them, how can we alleviate some of the risk? And this is how we do it. So what are the benefits, the pros for making the change? And then what are the costs for staying the same? And this is where we have to really, or not making the change rather, we really have to help our clients be honest and authentic. Because when we think about staying the same, we think it doesn't cost us because we know what we've got, but it does cost us because it's shutting down on dreams. It's shutting down on what we want. It's shutting down on our future and where we could possibly go. So we start with, what are the benefits? And then what are the costs of making the change? And that comes back to what I was talking about with competing commitments. And there will be a messy middle. You will get stuck. And we're going to talk about that in anatomy of staying stuck. You will get stuck. And how do you get yourself out of it? Conversely, what are the benefits of not making it? So we really engage people in going deep about what are the costs to not making it? What are the benefits? What are the benefits of making it? And then what are the costs of making it? And then another way of looking at it is to help our clients by asking them, what are your 3 biggest fears? Because that really helps you identify what's holding you back. What are your 3 biggest needs? What are your big desires? What do you want for yourself? And then what are the 3 biggest resources that can help you? So now we start saying, this is what I'm afraid of. This is what I want. And this is how I'm going to get there. So we start building a pathway by asking some of these questions. So we have a number of people on the call. I think what I'm going to do is ask you, instead of going into the breakout like we normally would, ask you to answer these questions. Think of a client, maybe yourself. What were your payoffs for remaining stuck? Can you think of a client that was stuck, and what were those payoffs? And could they verbalize their payoffs? This is where you talk to me.
Well, Peggy, I mean, I'll just share an example. And I've actually had several clients who have been stuck. And I continue to have clients who are stuck, which is why I was interested in today's session. The payoff for remaining stuck almost always for me, or for the people I've worked with, has been comfort. Comfort, lack, still having credibility with the people around them, because what they were doing right now, they were doing a good job. So a lot of this was career related and not wanting to take a leap in their career and things like that. And, afraid of looking ridiculous because you may try and fail. So I think that was those are probably the biggest, the comfort piece.
Comfort and fear of failure. Matt, what's been your experience?
Well, Marilyn just said it. I'll speak about myself. It was fear. Like, I've always thought, like, one of the bravest things that we can do is declare our goals out loud. Because once they're kind of out there, then, we're kind of held accountable to it, and, we're kind of exposed a little bit. So the times in my life that I have been stuck, there was a comfort in being stuck because I wasn't, quite frankly, I wasn't risking anything. Like, you are risking failure, and there's fear in that, because if I if I move off my point, like, things might not turn out the way I, wanted them to. So there's safety in just kind of like staying stuck. So it's kind of like that cost benefit analysis of getting yourself unstuck, if that makes sense.
Totally, makes total sense. Kathy, what do you think?
The familiarity resonated with me. I think it's even if it is toxic or not good, familiarity, it kind of goes along with what Marilyn and Matt said, with the comfort, and there's no risk. I think from an organization standpoint, we do have a pretty cool culture of this, like, test and learn. Like, just do it and try it. And you're going to learn. So we're going to learn, we're either going to not do this again. But organizationally, professionally, I still think there's this comfort of, not taking a risk and if I fail, then I don't have to experience that, because I'm pretty good with where I am. So
something that came up for me this morning with one of my chartered students. So we have 4 levels of designations at Global IOC, and the top one is chartered, and it's about the 2 things you have to do is deconstruct your practice, and number 2, talk about your body of work and its impact and contribution to the field of coaching. And so right before I got on the call, one of my members texted me or emailed me and said, I'm stuck, I need help. And what I've seen, these are people who write books. These are people who teach at universities. These are people who are at the top of their career. But when they have to talk about themselves, it feels so vulnerable. When I talk about how I do what I do, moving them from, every theorist and say, well, because the theorist says it, that's why I do it. So that's that familiarity and that safety to be able to say, I do it because this is the way I do it. And I believe in the way I do it. And yes, some people have informed it, but to go out there and say, this is me in my full vulnerability of how I coach is just a challenge. And so I think that what we haven't talked about, and it's woven into what you've shared, is the vulnerability of being unstuck. Okay. And people see into us when we're out there taking those risks. And so that makes it a little bit challenging for people. Matt.
I think sometimes when I think about myself being stuck, or people that I'm coaching being stuck, sometimes I feel like there is, I'm trying to figure out how I want to say it. They almost believe a narrative that like someday I will be unstuck, like someday I will be promoted, or someday I'll get in shape, or someday I'll go do that thing, but not right now. And it's almost like they're giving themselves some latitude because there is that thing out there versus doing it right now. And they become comfortable in that. I don't know if that makes any sense, but when I've been stuck sometimes, like you mentioned earlier, I started running and getting in shape. Well, for a long time, I wasn't in shape. And it was because I was like, well, someday that'll happen without it. Does that make sense? And that lulls you into being stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. Anita, you want to say something about stuckness?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I think I'm sitting here nodding my head at what Matt just said, because it's so true. It's becoming unstuck takes effort, and that effort is overwhelming. It's like, where do I start? What are people going to think? Is this the right decision? There's this back and forth, so I think that the effort encompasses the vulnerability and the fear, right? So I'm just going to stay here because it's much more comfortable, but I see a better future for myself. It's that, again, it's like you imagine it, you see it, and it feels better to keep it at a distance than to sit with it right now and just make an action towards it, right? It's very overwhelming. It's overwhelm of the effort. Where do I start? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good reason that people stay stuck is, what's the path? Like we think, and I love what Matt said. I think that we think the path is gonna just kind of come get us, but we have to create the path. And for those that know me, you know that I am an Angela Duckworth devotee who says, what is the big circle? What is your big circle? And then what are the 3 or 4 next circles? And how do you populate those circles? And I love to draw that and then take action on it. I love to draw it. Let's go back to drawing it. Okay. Drawing it is what is entertaining for a lot of people. taking action after you draw it, they still stay a little stuck. And I was laughing at myself as you all were talking, because you all know there's a book in me. Actually, there's 2 books in me right now. And I was laughing, thinking, I talked to someone earlier this week and she was talking to me about my book. And I said, "I'm stuck." Oh, well, am I or aren't I? I'm not writing with discipline every day like I was. So am I stuck or not? And so I think that we tell little white lies to ourselves, and our clients tell little white lies because they say they're not stuck, but you are stuck if you're not moving forward.
Yeah, the little white lies just resonated with me because it's almost like you convince when you are stuck, you convince yourself that you are moving forward because you do have that future dream. You actually, like, while you're stuck, you feel like you're moving forward. Yeah, I think I just said it. So those little white lies, it's convincing yourself that you're actually doing something when you're not.
Yeah. And our clients come in convincing us of the same thing, right? So Melissa, if you want to say something, oh, okay, she's coming in.
Sorry, I'm like on my treadmill as I'm watching this. So I just paused it for a second. But I think for me, the timing thing is definitely, because I'll always ask myself, like, well, what would you do if you weren't afraid? Because fear is a big thing, especially for me. So and a lot of times I know the answer, like I know the answer. And I'll agree with the answer, but I'll make excuses for, again, why the timing's not right. Or, well, let me just give it 1 more month and see, like, kind of what happens. Or, well, when this changes, that might change the way I feel. So I'm just going to kind of wait it out for a little bit. Or, like, I can speak personally, like, I have a lot of other stuff going on. And I'm like, I don't want to pile that. I don't want to feel that feeling right now if it's going to hurt or it's going to be more work for me because I have so many other things asking for my attention or that I'm really focused on. So I know that really, like, as Matt chimed in, I was in my head, I was like, timing, a lot of it is for me. It's like, when am I ready to actually, I know the answer to this question. When am I going to be ready to actually do what needs to be done? Because I know the right path. I'm just, I don't know, got to psych myself up, I guess, to get there sometimes.
Yeah. And I love what you said, Melissa, because it's that we don't want that feeling. We don't want the discomfort, because even, sitting down and writing 50 words every morning, it's not discomfort. It's just putting myself in the chair and doing it. And so how do we help our clients understand that, on the continuum of discomfort, how much pain is there really in taking action, right? And Melissa, you named it. We're afraid that something's going to change, that's not going to fit for us, that familiarity. And so I think that's exactly what is happening. And everyone set me up for when. And so Dan Pink has a fabulous, it's at the end, a YouTube, an hour YouTube on when. I'm going to start using it in the advanced class. But he says what happens during the day is we have our peak. We get up, and for those of us that are larks, we're out of bed and we're talking to people and we're making people crazy because we're talking to people. I just want to talk first thing in the morning, right? But about 6 o'clock at night, don't talk to me. So after lunch, we have this big drop. Okay, sometimes before lunch, we run out of energy. And then a little bit in the afternoon, particularly if we have coffee, we might have a little bit of recovery. So when do we start the new thing that we want to start? And so here we go into how he talks about analytic tasks, insight tasks, making an impression, and making a decision. When I'm there's a questionnaire that you can go out to for Dan Pink as well. When I'm talking to folks that are larks or third birds, those folks don't have such a big challenge of when they do something new in their life. And we're talking mini habits here. We're not talking about changing to moving locations. We're talking about just getting the energy going in terms of a mini habit. So the larks and the third birds are just built to do this, do the analysis in the morning, do the insight tasks in the afternoon, making an impression is a morning activity, and owls have to conform to a 9 to 5 job, okay, or a 9 to 6 role. And it's really interesting, particularly when I talk about working with salespeople. And this is really interesting when we talk about when to make cold calls, okay? So a lot of times, first of all, nobody likes to make cold calls, nobody, okay? But it's something we have to do to advance in our professions, particularly if we're in sales, right? And so what we do is we put that off to the end of the day, okay? And now we are calling people when that we're making an impression, we're asking for business or asking for something to be done, and for them maybe to make a decision, and it's all weighted in the morning. So when we put the really hard things in the afternoon, because we don't want to do them anyway, we're probably going to fail. And so we want to engage ourselves in doing, as what I say is clean the toilets first, okay? Nobody likes to clean the toilets. We leave them go to the end of the day. No, get it going in the morning. And remember, as I said earlier, the prefrontal cortex is what creates change for us. Yes, eat the frog, right? It is the prefrontal cortex is where we get the energy. The glucose goes to the prefrontal cortex, but remember, willpower can be, we can lose willpower. And so thinking about the timing of when we do the thing we want to do is important as well. So one of the things that Dan talks about in leveraging the troughs, remember the trough is when we start losing energy. Something beats nothing. And what he talks about is that you'd work 52 minutes and take a 17-minute break. Okay, not sure those numbers work into 60 minutes, but the idea is 50-10, take a 10-minute break. When I was working on my dissertation, I would go into my office at 6 in the morning and I would come out at 8 at night, and I would write very little. Because I was just spinning, and I was actually rabbit holing because I was reading everything that wasn't related to my dissertation at the time. And so when I started chunking into 2-hour segments and then taking a break, working out, going to the store, whatever, that is how we get through the troughs. We allow ourselves to take breaks. Moving beats stationary. Social beats solo. Walking around the block if you're at work, being with people, breaks through that, just the individuality. Outside beats inside. Fully detached beats semi-detached, and breathing. So these are some ideas, some resources for working with clients in terms of how they can, when they just get in and they just work, they got to create those breaks, because they do have troughs. Whether they understand the trough or not, whether they understand what they're feeling or not, they're still having the trough. So I love this. So when's the best time to start? And Melissa was talking about this, and so it made me think of, oh good, we've got this slide, okay? And so the first day of the month, okay, so you got 12 times you can start. Mondays, you've got 52 times you can start. The first day of spring, Independence Day, religious holidays, a loved one's birthday. I was talking to my functional medicine doctor on Monday, it was his birthday, and he started telling me what he was going to do for the whole next year. So he doesn't go January to December. He goes from his birthday, and he was so excited and lit up about what he was going to do. The first day of school, the new job, day 1 after graduation, the first day back from vacation, that could be 4, okay? The anniversary, or the day you finish this book. And so he's talking about having read his book. Now that I've read when, I'm going to take action. So I love that Melissa brought it up, and it's an easy way to come back to clients or to self and say, okay, when am I going to do this? Okay. I always go on a diet the first day of the month, and I make it to about the 5th day. So, but I always do it. It's the first day of the month. I'm really going to eat healthy this month. Okay. So it's how many days I can get going. And as the Seinfeld says, never miss twice, but I eventually miss twice, but it's always for me starting it. And so this is midpoints. And so this is the messy middle that we're talking about here. How do we talk about midpoints with folks? We normalize them. It's gonna happen. We have midpoints. Wake up call. I'm in a midpoint. How do I re-engage? How do I reactivate the reason I wanted to do this thing? How do I come back into my why? Okay. If you're not a little behind, imagine you're behind. Okay. When Matt was training for the marathon, you know, he was supposed to be doing this many things on these days. Well, maybe he was doing it, but he was still feeling like he was in a midpoint. So can you do more? So what is the thing you're doing? What are you building for? Set interim goals. And this is one of the things that people, particularly high achievers, don't do. They're like, I want to hit my goal and all I focus on is my goal. And yet when I'm working with salespeople and we break it down into daily and monthly instead of annually, it feels achievable. So how can you set interim goals that will break down the larger goal? And everybody says this. Jack Canfield, I haven't read an author yet talking about goals that doesn't say break them into milestones and not just one big goal. And Matt said this earlier, publicly commit to your goals, tell people you're doing it, tell people that are going to ask you about it. That's why Weight Watchers is so effective, because you go get weighed in front of people, okay? People are going to see it. And that makes it, you know, very public. Stop your work where you want to begin the next day. And so Canfield also says, write down what you're going to do the next day, because if there's anything in that, your subconscious will work while you sleep to solve any challenges you might be facing. That's when you wake up with aha moments, or you're in the shower and the aha comes on. It's because your subconscious was working on it all night. And I've already read this, Don't Break the Chain. And it's a Seinfeld story that is in every book on performance. And that is, he kept a calendar with red X's, and the red X's showed that he did what he's supposed to do that day. And so the idea is don't break the chain of the red X's. James Clear says don't miss twice. Okay, so he's like, we're going to give ourselves grace, but we're not going to skip twice. So tracking is critical to the messy middle. What Carol found out is people don't want to admit there is going to be a messy middle. You are going to get stuck. You're going to hate the thing that you said you were going to do. It was interesting when people start working on dissertations in grad school, you get so sick of the topic. You're like, I hate this topic. I'm never talking about it again. Okay. Because you're just over it. And so some of the things that have an ending like that, you get over it while you're in the middle of it. So I'm going to move on. We won't stay here, but I want to get through the anatomy of a breakthrough, because Adam Atler has some really good ideas. And number one, you will get stuck. Okay. So how are you going to plan for being stuck? What are you going to use? Can you go back to some of those midpoint questions? What are you going to use when you get stuck? How are you going to re-engage? How are you going to reinvigorate? When you see other people and you're comparing yourself to them, you're seeing them as they are successful. You're not seeing their stuckness. And so stop comparing yourself and thinking that you're not going to be, that there's something wrong with you because you're stuck. Okay, learn to distinguish between reasons you are stuck that are within your control and reasons that are not. Okay, what can you take control of? When we talk about the messy middle and stuckness in the messy middle and competing commitments, can you renegotiate those competing commitments? How can you, recommit to what you said you wanted to do? Expect lulls in the middle, the messy middle. Like I said, it's, when we go back to what Britt Frank was talking about, nobody's looking to be uncomfortable. Nobody. Okay. And when we tell people you need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, it's actually stupid, okay? Because nobody wants to be uncomfortable. Oh, I love this feeling, this sick feeling in my stomach. Oh, I love this feeling of feeling like I don't know what to do. Oh, I love this feeling of feeling like I'm not making progress. Nobody says that, okay? But you will be uncomfortable and you will move through it because you have been uncomfortable before. So leveraging that we've been uncomfortable before and it didn't take us out is better than saying, get comfortable with it. Like, enjoy that feeling. Really? No, nobody wants that. Chunk goals, we've already talked about that. Life quakes. Things are going to happen that you don't plan, okay? Things happen. And so anticipate what you can from a life quake, but if you can't, give yourself grace, okay? Moving through the messy middle. Before you quit, keep going for longer than you thought you could. This is what my first role in teaching people to quit smoking was about, helping them delay an urge. So delay that urge to do the thing that you don't want to do. Can you wait 5 minutes? Can you wait 10 minutes? Can you wait another day before you don't do the thing that you say that you're going to do? Or can you think about how much longer could you go? Okay, can you continue to write for 30 minutes instead of 15 minutes? So, thinking about mini habits and how we can move forward. And this is something that Anita brought up. Your best ideas come later. Okay, and you know that I love to build that plan. I love that top goal, and I love the 3 goals below it. But if you could see my strategy for 2018 for global and my strategy in 2023, they're ideas that dropped in. They weren't ideas that we had. They were ideas that came as part of what we were going to do. Our whole stream strategy dropped in one day when I was thinking, disciplines want coaching specific to them. What does that look like? Okay, your best ideas come late. Challenges mean you're moving beyond the obvious. Challenges mean you're making and making success, that things are happening. So challenges are natural. They're going to be part of the middle. We ignore small problems longer than larger ones. I just started laughing when I read this, okay? Because I ignore so much from, one of the folks that developed coaching was Thomas Leonard, and he calls them tolerations. There's so many things we tolerate, like a dripping sink, like, even some toxic familiarity in a job. We'll just tolerate some of the smaller things. But man, if there's a big one and it needs to be handled, I'm on it, okay? And I think that's true for a lot of people because we feel like we can handle the big ones and we can ignore the little ones, but the little ones tap us on the shoulder all day long. And so how do we remove the problems so they're not getting us in, keeping us stuck? Preventive maintenance, remember pre-parades and pre-mortems. We talked about that. If I'm wildly successful, what will I be doing? Conversely, if I fail miserably at the thing I'm trying to do, what got in my way? Being clear about what gets in our way. So mental traps are more dangerous and present more dangers than our physical traps. It's what's the story in our head and how are we helping our clients get that story out? Focus on excellence versus perfection. Make larger tasks granular. What is it you're going to do? As a high I personality, I don't always have the detail. I don't always have the process. So how do you take what you're doing and build the process? So think about the personalities of the folks you're coaching as well, and think about how you can help them build that process. Avoid thrashing about mentally. Where are your thoughts going and what can you do to bring your thoughts back? Embrace silence. RAIN. We use RAIN in our coaching program, and that is recognize feelings. Recognize, accept that you have feelings, investigate where they're coming from, and do not identify with them. The N is don't identify. It's you're not your feeling, you're having that feeling. So we talked earlier about the biggest feeling we have when it comes to being stuck is afraid to move forward. So how do we eliminate some of that fear? What is the story we're telling around the fear? And Kathy brought this up earlier, make room for failure. Some things are going to work, some things aren't going to work. And, you know, when they don't work, then what do you need to do to adjust? So how do we think about failure in terms of we took action, maybe it didn't work, but we still took action, and what did we learn from it? And deal with lower order needs first. So what are the things that need to happen in order to build upon that foundation? And I use the diagram from the Human Performance Institute that we used to use in my former organization. And where am I physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually? And, you know, what we talked about is when you turn that pyramid upside down, you become extraordinary because your passion leads you. It's the force of your energy, your passion. How are you focusing your energy? How are you living into opportunity emotional states instead of fear-based emotional states? And then how are you taking care of your body? All of these things are super important, and we forget about it being stuck, that something could be happening in this space of physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual that we need to look at with our clients and explore with them. Are they ready to meet the demands of getting unstuck? And so finally, looking at what's going on from the urgent and important. Am I dealing more with deception and waste, or am I in necessity and quality? So hold on to your ideas lightly. Ask other people what they think, because that will help you get out of your own thinking and give you some ideas. Question your own decisions, conduct experiments. When stuck, act. I love this. When you're stuck, do one little thing towards that dream, towards that goal. What's the one thing we can do that isn't going to expose our vulnerability? What's the one thing that we're going to do that won't embarrass us publicly because maybe we won't be successful? So what's the one thing? I am a drives action. I've read this so many times. I exercise versus I am an exerciser. When we put identity with what we do, it gives it more power. And obviously, we all know this one, you know, moving your body, because all that energy gets stuck in our body. So how can we move our body? So we're at the top of the hour. Tell me what your takeaway is from today, from what we talked about. What's the one thing you're going to do with self or clients?
So for me, one of the things that I kind of take away is fear and emotion keeps people stuck. So you really need to help them there. So when I think about how to help someone get unstuck, it's, you know, make the movement simple, you know, check in with them, celebrate the little victories, don't neglect their emotions. It's okay to talk about, like, okay, so we made this movement, how are we feeling? You know, almost like reaffirming, like, the worst case didn't happen, you know, and just so make it simple, celebrating those checkpoints, you know, reaffirming the emotion of it, and celebrating the movement along the way.
I love that. Thanks, Matt. Marilyn, what's your takeaway?
Yeah, I have several. First of all, I had never really heard the term toxic familiarity, and I really like that because I know that applies to a lot of people. I think several of the things that Matt said, but for me, I don't think I've been helping people recognize that messy middle enough with clients, and so we break past those barriers. You know, I've done some of the things Matt said, you know, celebrate small things, but then there's just this period of time where there doesn't seem to be this progression. So I took that away. And then, and again, not that I hadn't seen these things before, but everything from the lark and the owl, and, you know, the practical things of starting, you know, can it be on a Monday? Can it be, you know, the first day of the month? Just some of those practical little things to help people. Now, for me, I'm thinking of restarting or re-energizing when they're in that messy middle.
Yes, I love that. Give themselves grace. Anita. You're on mute.
For me, a lot of takeaways, like Marilyn said, I like the toxic familiarity is definitely a wake up thing. It's shines a lot of light because we all have that. And the clients that I work with have a lot of that going on. The bravest thing you can do is declare your goals out loud. I love that. And I will remember that for myself. Celebrating accomplishments, but also celebrating the failures. It's okay. It's okay to fall. It makes me think of learning how to ride a bike. And I took a lot of spills and falls when I was learning how to ride my bike, but I was so determined because all of my friends were able to ride a bike. And I was like the last one that learned how to ride a bike because I was so afraid of getting hurt. I was so determined and wanted to be a part of a group of people that were succeeding because they were successful. They could ride their bikes and they can ride to their friends' houses and all of this stuff. And I would either walk or run. So finally one day I was like, I am going to do this. And with my dad's help, we kept on it, back and forth in the driveway, back and forth in the drive. I kept falling. I kept getting back on. I cried. And I was like, that's what it reminded me of. When Matt said celebrate accomplishments, I finally, I'll never forget that feeling of I got on that bike and I rode. It was freedom. It was, a lot of falling, getting hurt. But once I got there, it was such freedom. It was liberating. So there's something to be said, some of the most successful people in the world have failed many, many, many times. And we need to bring that to light more. We need to look at the failures and celebrate them, because without them, you're not making any progress.
Well, I think that is so spot on. And what I'm taking away from what you just said, Anita, is being able to connect the freedom we have when we let go of toxic familiarity. Do you want that freedom? So helping our clients desire to move beyond that. By the way, toxic familiarity is something I've coined. I've not read it anywhere. I've read familiarity, but not toxic. And I just think it fits together. Like, we're willing to sit in it because it feels familiar, but it's toxic. So staying in a bad relationship, staying in a bad job, staying in something that doesn't take us into the best version of ourselves. It's not helping us. So it's toxic, but it's also familiar. Melissa, anything you want to add?
I think for me, if I pick, the one thing, I love the matrix at the beginning. It's really helpful for me sometimes to put it on paper, because I can think it in my head or help other people think it in their heads. But the pros and cons of doing it or not doing it, I think writing it down is really to be brave enough to write it down, the truth, to write it down, and helping other people be brave enough of, to write it down, what they're truly feeling. For me, that would be the one thing that I would take away to use not only personally, but professionally as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I put up on my last slide, and I'll send this slide to you all. Brene Brown has amazing work to think about how we can help clients get unstuck. One of my favorite books is The Mountain Is You by Brianna Weiss, and she talks about how we get in our own way. And that's an amazing book. The Choice by Edith Eger. She's a Holocaust survivor, and she's a psychologist, and she's amazing. The Next Big Idea Club has tons of resources for what people are writing about. And then I do have the YouTube work that Dan Pink did on the perfect timing. And so hopefully that will help all of you think about when is the perfect timing, because he does go back through his book. So I appreciate your comments. I appreciate your time. This webinar will be available. I asked Alana to post it. And throughout the summer, she'll be taking pieces of it and putting it out on our LinkedIn profile. But anytime you have anything you need, let me know. I'll see you today, Anita, and I'll see you today later. Melissa.
Got it.
Thank
Have a
you.
good rest of your day. Thank you so much for coming today. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.